So we are live again, and it's pretty late, but I just wanted to do something before I sleep so as I don't feel guilty of not doing anything. Okay, so let's start with it.
Page. And then we have our main two sections, that nav bar, which we saw at the top, and the main section. Inside the nav bar, we had a couple elements like the image, and then maybe let's call it React Facts Text and H3, and this React Course Project 1 and H4. And then in the main section, there was our H1 and an unordered list with some list items inside. Now, in terms of React, this can be a really helpful exercise because I can start to see that I will probably have two main components. First, a custom nav component, which will house my nav element with its children elements. And second, a main custom component, which will house my H1 and my unordered list with the list items. In terms of those nested items, like the image and H3, those are going to be simple enough that they won't need their own custom React component. And then I would take my custom nav component and my custom main component and probably collect them together in one more custom component, which I usually end up calling app. And that will be what renders my div with the class of container. And then that app component, since it contains all the elements on my project, will then be rendered with React.render. So I hope this has been a helpful exercise for you, at least to see the way that I usually like to break down my projects. If it's a layout that's fairly basic like this, I usually will just kind of think about it ahead of time without actually writing it down or putting a bunch of dotted squares around the elements or anything like that. But once you've practiced this enough times, a simple layout like this might take you a total of maybe 10 seconds to think through. But in the end, could end up saving you a lot of time. So now it's time for us to get your hands on the keyboard. We're going to have a series of challenges, which will help you be the one that actually builds out this project.
Okay, nice. I think this is pretty basic.
Let's start by getting some of the project setup out of the way. I've written some step-by-step instructions here in the challenge. It is going to be a little bit more involved because we're creating everything completely from scratch, or almost completely from scratch. So your challenge is to create a components folder, and this components folder is going to have two files in it, the navbar.js file and the main.js file. For now, they should just render an H1 that says something like navbar goes here and main section here. Then I want you to create an app component, which will be outside of the components folder, and have the app component render the navbar and main components that you just created. Then inside of this file, the index.js, you will import the app component and then use react.render to render that. The last step is to go and get the inter Google font, specifically with the weights of 400, 600, and 700. Once you've selected those font weights, you should see a series of link tags that you can use to put.
Wait, why do I have to use React DOM? Hmm.
See a series of link tags that you can use to put inside of our index.html. Make sure to 100, 600, and 700. Once you've selected those font weights, you should create an app component, which will be outside of the components folder, and have the app component render the navbar and main components that you just created. Then inside of this file, the index.js, you will import the app component and then use react.render to render that. The last step is to go and get the inter Google font, specifically with the weights of 400, 600, and 700. Once you've selected those font weights, you should see a series of link tags that you can use to put inside of our index.html. Make sure to put them above style.css so that we can reference them in style.css. And if you haven't used Google Fonts before, this one might take a little bit of extra research outside of scrimba here to learn more about. But I know that you can do it. Fortunately, Google Fonts makes it relatively easy. Just know that you can ignore the at import or any npm options it talks about for installing this font. Remember, we're not dealing with any kind of styling right now. So by the end of this challenge, you'll just have a basic white page that just shows navbar here and main section here or something like that. So pause now and work on this challenge.
Actually, I can work on this challenge, but I don't.
Okay, let's just go one step at a time. We'll first create a new folder called components. Inside components, we can create a new file for main.js and navbar.js. As always, we will import React from React, and we will export default our navbar function, our navbar component. And for now, this is just going to return an H1 that let's have it say navbar component. Then our main.js is going to be almost identical. We'll just copy this, paste it in instead of navbar component. We'll say main component, and we'll call this element the main element. Okay, I'll hit save. This is just going to bring my preview window that's still empty, so I need to create a new file called app.js. And inside app.js, again, we'll import React from React. We'll also import our navbar component from /components/navbar, and we'll do the same for main, so I'll just duplicate that line and change navbar to main. Then this app component we will export directly here with export default function app. And we will just have this return, but we want our navbar to be in here, so we'll say navbar, and we want our main component to be in here. But I was thinking, what's wrong with the way that I've done this? You can see this is so what's wrong with the way that I've set this up? Inside components, we can only return a single element. That element can have children elements, but right now we're trying to have two sort of side-by-side components. So what we need to do is wrap those in some kind of container div. So I'll move this div around into those. If you remember from the last screencast, we talked about how this would probably just be set up as a container, so we'll give it that class name of container. We're not going to deal with any styling now, but I might as well add that class name since I know I'm going to need it. Okay, let's go check our challenge and see where we are so far. So I created a components folder. I created the navbar and main components already. I created my app component, which is rendering the navbar and main components. So here we are. Let's import and render the app component here. I will import app from /app. Oh, and I am going to be using some JSX index, so I also need to import React from React. And in our index.js, I will also be using React DOM. So I need to import React DOM from React DOM. And then I'll use React DOM.render to render my app component, which I just imported. And we're going to put it inside of the element with the ID of root. So we'll use document element by ID root. And let's see if we get our elements showing up on the page. Awesome. Navbar component just like expected. Okay, so that completes this part of the challenge. And the last thing was to go to Google Fonts to get the inter font. Hopefully this wasn't too tricky. Going to Google Fonts will give you a couple link elements. So I'm just going into my index.html, and above my style.css, I will just paste in those link elements. You can see that we have this pre-connected Google Fonts. This one's G static, but then this one is for our actual fonts. Here you can see the font family is inter, and it shows our weights of 400, 600, and 700 there. Again, I'm putting this above my style.css so that inside of my style.css I can reference the font family of inter, and my browser will have already read these other link tags to know exactly what the inter font is. Okay, let's go back here, and we have finished everything from this challenge. I'll just do a little bit of cleanup. Now we did just cover a lot of ground. However, every step that we did was something that you should have already been able to do. Maybe exception to the Google fonts if you've never dealt with Google fonts before. So if you did find yourself struggling to get some of this basic setup done, that might be a good signal to you that it's time to go back and restudy and especially re-practice some of the past challenges that we've done instead of just kind of plowing ahead in this course. The reason for that is because I'm essentially what I want for you as you're learning React is to just continue on without actually having one more opportunity to access the Figma design file, colors, the spacing, the fonts, and everything like that. Arrow at the top, and choosing to duplicate this to your drafts. That'll make it so that you aren't seeing everyone else's cursors in selection. Here, it will take you to the Figma design file. We talked about this much earlier in the section, but since it's been a while, I figured this would be a good reminder. If you click on the screenshot here, it will take you to the Figma file where you can get access to the design elements for this, like the colors, the spacing, the fonts, and everything like that. When you click on this link, it will take you to a shared version of this. However, if you'd like, you can avoid seeing everyone else's cursors and selections by clicking on the little arrow at the top and choosing to duplicate this to your drafts. That'll make it so that you aren't seeing everyone else's cursors and selections, but also so that you can make changes to it if you'd like. Okay, let's do it. Let's jump right in and start working on the navbar portion of our project. Hey there, I'm jumping in at this point to let you know that I've created a very quick Figma tutorial. Throughout this course and many others here on Scrimba, we're going to be providing you with a Figma design file, and I do think you'll find Figma fairly intuitive, but I thought it would be a good idea to just record a quick tutorial to help you along. The first thing you'll have to do is go over to figma.com and create a new account. And as I was signing up for a second account just to kind of test this process, I realized that there's actually a lot of steps, so I figured I would walk you through it. First, you're going to click sign up. You'll obviously either sign up with Google or you can provide an email and password. I believe if you provide an email and password, it will have you go verify your email, so it'll send you an email to verify. Once you've done that and you come back, it will have you choose which kind of plan you want. Figma has a really generous free tier, so I would just start for free. You'll click that button down there. When it asks you to tell you about your team, you can at this point honestly just say skip this step. And then when it says what would you like to do first, I just think it's easiest to say I'll explore by myself. And when you do that, it's going to drop you into the Figma interface. Now, from that point on, I've actually recorded a whole tutorial using the Figma program that is now over on the Scrimba YouTube channel. So at this point, you're going to continue onto YouTube by clicking on the screenshot here, which will take you to the video that I recorded. And hopefully that quick introduction to Figma will really help make things easier for you as you use Figma as a part of your Scrimba coursework. So click on the screenshot you see here, head over to YouTube. When you've watched that video and you're done, you can close that window, come back here to Scrimba and continue on in this course. Once you're all signed up with Figma,
Nice. But I don't have time to watch that video.
okay, this is the fun part. We're actually going to make our navigation bar look the way that it looks in the design. A couple pieces of advice. I highly recommend you reference the Figma file that contains all of the fonts, colors, spacing, and everything instead of just looking at this quick reference that I put here, but this is meant to be just a quick reference for you if you need it. Another thing is I have added a couple of base styles to our styles.css. I ran into some problems trying to record this without putting my box sizing, and just because it helps a lot, I'm going to remove the margin on the body, especially to make our navigation bar go all the way to .css. I ran into, to be just a quick reference for you if you need .css, I ran into some problems.
I don't know why do people do box size in border box? I don't know, I just really don't know. Okay, so height should contain the border, right?
Trying to record this without putting my box sizing, and just because it helps a lot, I'm going to remove the margin on the body, especially to make our navigation bar go all the way to the edges. Also notice that I have included the React icon small image here inside of the images folder. You can see that's part of the design here in the upper left. So without further ado, pause the screencast and make the navigation bar look as close to our design as you can. All right, let's do this. Instead of rendering H1, I'm going to open this up and render a nav element because this is a navigation bar. And inside there we have an image. Give it source here. I have to use // images because it means that's looking cool. And let's call this maybe an H3, I guess maybe this H4. Really doesn't matter. Screen. Now we talk about this one says React course /project 1. Okay, refresh that, and we got on screen. Now we talk about we have nav bar will probably be a flexbox container. So I think because I'm only going to have one nav element on the screen, I'm just going to style the element nav. If you want, you can also give it a class name as well. We're going to put flex. We'll say line items in the center. From the design, we can find that the background color is color here. It also looks like it has about 30 pixels of padding on the top, bottom, and 25 pixels of padding on the left and right. And we can also see from the design that it has a height of about 9 pixels. Okay, so it doesn't look like our top and bottom background color is flex. We'll say line items in the center. From the design, we can find that the background color is color here. It also looks like it has about 30 pixels of padding on the top and bottom and 25 pixels of padding on the left and right. And we can also see from the design that it has a height of about 90 pixels. Okay, so it doesn't look like our top and bottom margin is applying, and I suspect that's either because our image is a little bit too large, or I think maybe more likely because our H3 and H4 here have some top and bottom margin by default. So I think I might just select the H3 directly inside of the nav. Let's say margin.
Now how would I know that an H3 is causing the margin? Maybe inspect element
is 0, and then let's see if that also works for the H4. Okay, it might be that the image is just a little too large. Let's take a look at the image, and it looks like from the design it's got a height of about 30 pixels. Okay, so maybe our padding is doing fine, and it was just that the image was a little bit large. While we're here dealing with the image, I'm going to give it a margin right, just to bump it away from the text there a little bit. We'll say, I think the design shows it's about 7 pixels. That looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and use the margin right of auto on our H3 just to bump that H4 all the way to the right side. Cool. All right, well, while we're working on that, we can go ahead and give the color to our React facts. So we'll say the color is this color from the design. Okay, that does it for the color. Let's get the fonts right. And actually, I think
cool
all
color.
of the fonts on this page are Inter, so I'm just going to change that in the body. We'll say Inter, and then I think a backup of sans serif makes sense. Let me just comment this out. Yeah, okay, so that's making a difference. So awesome. Our Google fonts are coming through just fine. I can also see from the design that the React Facts logo words there have a font weight of 700, so we'll bold those up a little bit. Or maybe that's the default, doesn't look like it's making much of a difference. And then let's do the same thing for our H4. It has this color from the design, and it looks like it has a font weight of 600. Okay, that's making a slight difference, so that's good. And it kind of looks to me like React Facts maybe needs to be a little bit bigger. And yeah, I can see from the design that it has a font size of something around 22 pixels. Okay, that's looking awesome. Now, when I can avoid it, I usually don't love to style things with their native components if I don't have to. Maybe just for practice sake, I'm going to go into my navbar and I'll start providing some class names here. So let's give a class name to everything on the page. Let's go class name equals, and then up here, maybe I'll use something kind of like Vim syntax. I'll say this is part of the nav block. The element is the icon, and then we'll say this is the nav block, and the element is the, it's kind of like the logo text, and this one is part of the nav, and let's call it the, maybe like the title of our project here. And what's nice about that is I don't have to do these kind of nested selectors anymore. My H3 was nav logo text, and I can also select my nav title and change these other selectors as well. And one thing I've learned about scrimba is I have to make sure I save this when I change my class names before I come to the CSS. Otherwise, the CSS updates live, but the markup does not. So once I hit refresh there, that kind of everything back the way it was. Awesome. This is a really excellent start. Frankly, most of what we did here was just CSS instead of actually doing React. But my goal with this course is not just to focus entirely on React. I want to synthesize some of the information you have been learning so far, including revisiting the CSS and markup and stuff like that as much as we can. Frankly, in this first section, of course, we aren't doing much of the detailed side of React. We mostly have just learned some of the very basic syntax. But I think it's important for us to remind ourselves of the past information we learned by practicing it here. So the next thing we're going to do is fill out the body section here, or the main section here. There's a couple of gotchas with this that we're going to actually address later. But whenever you feel good about everything we've done here in this challenge, then let's move on to the next one.
That was tough, to be honest. I should have tried it at least.
Okay, let's work on this main section here. I do want you to skip two aspects of the design right now. We're not going to worry about changing the colors of these bullets, and we're not going to worry yet about adding this logo over here to the right. Everything else, though, is fair game for this exercise, so pause the screencast and work on this task. All right, let's go ahead and make this into a main element. This is another semantic HTML element, and it represents the main section of our app here, so we will call it that. And it looks like it really only has two elements in it. It's got this H1 and an unword list with 5 items. That should be relatively straightforward. And it says fun facts about React. We have our unword list. And we hit Option Shift now to create copies of those, so I'm typing every time, so we'll just find it. And save as the main element, because I probably have one. Well, I know that I only have one. And we'll give it a background color, which we can go ahead and grab from the thing file. Okay, and we'll decide some issues here. Now, I haven't set up my body or my main element to be a full height, and it looks like maybe the class margin, I'm guessing this H1 has a margin on top, which is something like body with a background color, which we can go ahead and grab from the thing file. Okay, and we'll decide some issues.
No, I really am bad at CSS. I really need to watch this.
Here, now, I haven't set up my body or my main element to be a full height, and it looks like maybe the collapsing margin, I'm guessing this H1 has a margin on top, which is causing this whole section to collapse down below. So let's give, first of all, the main section height of, let's try 100%. Yeah, sometimes that doesn't work. Maybe if I give my body height of 100 view height, refresh this. Well, okay, you know what? I think this is highlighting another problem that I was planning on addressing later. So for now, what I'm going to do is actually move this background color to the body so that it does cover everything. Okay, and that'll be a good enough start. We'll fix this a little bit later, but it did highlight the fact that what we had here is our main section is not taking up the entire body here. In a couple of screencasts from now, we'll see why that's a problem, but for now, I'm just going to put my background color on the body. Okay, and I probably actually don't need this height of 100% right now. We'll come back to that later. Oh, however, I do want to give it some padding, and it looks like from the design I have about 55 pixels. It says 57. We'll just go ahead with 57 on the top and bottom, and then about 27 pixels on the left and right. And well, you know, I think that margin, this looks a little too much. I'm going to guess that the margin of my H1 here is.
So let's see what the padding and then 4 values. So first is for top, right, bottom, left. This is our learning.
It's a little bit high. Let me just check that if I set this to margin 0. Yeah, that normalizes it a little bit more. So instead of selecting all H1s, let's go here and give this class name. And similar to the last one, I'll say this is the main block and it's the title element. And that way I can be a little more specific about which.
So DEM basically means that you first specify the block and then you specify the element and then the modifier. So the element is like menu item. You go dash dash. I don't know. This is bad and this is good.
H21. And again, I need to refresh this in order for that class name to apply. And awesome. Okay, the sizing is looking good. Let's get our color correct. Now our H1 here also has a font size of about 39 pixels, and everything else needs to be white. Maybe I'll just color the entire section here. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, awesome. Well, now that I have removed the margin from my title, it looks like my unordered list is bumping a little bit close to my title. Rather than giving my title a margin bottom to push it down, I personally prefer to have elements push themselves away from other elements, if that makes any sense. And when I see this, I think of the unordered list as being too close to the H1 as opposed to the other way around. That might not make any sense. That's just how my mind is working. I'm going to give my unordered list a class name. Let's say this is main dash dash, we'll say facts. And we will select our main facts, and I'll give it a margin top of, looks like the design says 46 pixels. Okay, now actually I just looked at the Figma file and noticed that our title actually has a slight change to the letter spacing. So I'm just going to copy and paste that here, and yeah, that compresses our H1 a little bit, actually quite a bit. So we will go ahead and leave that there. Sometimes these rules like this are really easy to overlook if you aren't looking closely in the Figma design. Something that's really nice is I can actually just copy all of the rules if I need to, and paste them here, and then I can decide which ones are actually making a difference or are necessary. Now I already have that one. I can just comment these out. This one's technically making a slight difference. I'm not terribly worried about it. The font size we already specified. Font weight of bold is already the default, font style of normal, and so forth. I can get rid of some of these as well. But we can see this one actually did make quite a bit of a difference, so it's good that we put it in there. Okay, now these are really close together, so I'm going to select all of the list items under main facts. I'm doing this just so I don't have to give a class name to every single LI or give the same class name to every single list item there. And actually, let's go ahead and do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to copy some of these font styles that we have inside of Figma and see if any of them made a difference. I don't need that. That's not making a difference. That's already the default. That's already the default. That makes a tiny difference. Maybe I'll leave it in there. It did separate them a little bit. I'm guessing, however, I'm going to have to apply some padding to these. So let's give a little bit of padding. There's a relatively new CSS property called padding block that allows me to only specify the padding on the top and bottom in one go. Let's start with 10 pixels and see how that looks. And yeah, that looks fairly accurate. Another thing I'm noticing.
Nice padding block. Start and end. I think I'm sleepy now.
Noticing is that the text is actually wrapping around here, and mine is not. It's going all the way to the right. This probably isn't much of a problem. If I did want to fix that, I could probably just apply a max width on my list items. That way it's not taking up the entire left to right, maybe something like 400 pixels. And yeah, that seems to wrap it a little bit. And awesome, this is a great start. We're only missing 2 minor things. This probably isn't much of a problem. If I did want to fix that, I'm noticing is that the text, let's start with 10 pixels and see how that looks. And yeah, that looks fairly accurate. Another thing I'm noticing is that the text is actually wrapping around here, and mine is not. It's going all the way to the right. This probably isn't much of a problem. If I did want to fix that, I could probably just apply a max width on my list items. That way it's not taking up the entire left to right, maybe something like 400 pixels. And yeah, that seems to wrap it a little bit.
Wow, that's just great. I think I can end with this, and I can actually include that in my learnings. So basically, learned a lot of things. So I learned about so this can be CSS or say what name should I give? Scrimba 1 or 2. Scrimba 2. But that doesn't define any meaning, right? So let's say React info site. Right, that might site style.md. Okay, so I learned about Flexbox, and I learned about that max width. So this can reduce width and also help you in wrapping the text. So this actually wraps the text, right? And BEM convention, obviously. And padding block, and this gives us top and bottom. And if we specify in padding, if we specify 2 values, then this means top, bottom, and then we do left, right. If there are three values, I don't know, four values I know, that's top, bottom, I don't know, top, right, bottom, left. So it's top, right, bottom, left. So it's like going clockwise. So I guess if there are three values, what will happen? Let's see. So first padding applies to the top, second to the right and left, and third to the bottom. Okay. Bottom. Okay. Now what did we learn? Did we actually learn something? Lock, element, modifier. I don't know if this is the way. I'm not really sure, but this might be the just. Okay, what else did we learn? Okay, so this is what we learned. This is it. I'm totally awake now. Like an idiot. Oh, we also learned letter spacing. There's a property called letter spacing.
Good that we put it in there. Okay, now these are really style with normal and so forth. I can get rid of some of these as well. But we can see already specified. Font weight of bold is already the default font style with normal and so forth. I can get rid of some of these as well. Under main facts, we need some of the different. Guessing, however, I'm going to apply the padding on the top and
Can be negative. Okay. Anything else? Anything else? I already knew about this one, right? So this means P where parent is div, and this what? Okay, so the difference between this and this is I can actually So basically what this means is, in this case, the div will be the direct parent, and in this case, the p should just be inside div, and it can be actually nested inside, right? This is, I think, what this means. And yeah, let's move on to the next thing. We can actually look out for these whenever I get time. So I think I can give it here. Or is it the other way? Actually, it is the other way. Nice. Okay, what else? So this is some other project. Just JavaScript. I can actually include another like section with, I want to see everything. Yeah, I can include a section with links, right? So I can put all of the links in one place. So h2, and this is the first link. Just make a second one. Huh? Why did this not work? Why is this not working? Okay, some kind of error here. Maybe because of these. Maybe because of these less than and greater than, maybe. But that would erase the meaning of these, right? So maybe I can put it above all of these. So I can say links and then this. Amazing. And what was the other link? Did I close it? So I did not close it. Other link was this, right? So learn Figma. And then what? Just JavaScript. So this is like a $10 course. $10 for Indians. JavaScript course by K. Aaron. Basically, this guy is Dan. And what do we have more? GH pages. Main section. Okay. So this is definitely something cool. Okay. A reintroduction to JavaScript. This is amazing. but I'm really lazy to even do JavaScript once, and why would I do twice? Lol. So this is like a React.js official website tutorial. I think I will try it later, I guess. And then GH pages, of course. I can actually include this. This one is better. I think this is good. This looks good. Let's copy it. Commit new file. I think that's it. And I think I should make a bot that actually posts this on Twitter, I guess. But all of this would actually be really, really long. I just want him to post the main things, but yeah, this is cute, in my opinion. And yeah, thanks for watching if you are watching. Oh, we have only streamed for 30 minutes. I think we can study more then. Let's do it.
And bottom in one go. Let's start with 10 pixels and see how that looks. And yeah, that looks fairly problem. If I did want to fix that, I could probably just apply a max width on my list items. That way it's not taking up the entire left to right, maybe something like 400 pixels. And yeah, that seems to wrap it a little bit. And awesome, this is a great start. We're only missing 2 minor things. We're going to change these colors of these bullets to be the same color as our logo up here, and we're also going to add this little React logo over here to the right. However, both of these have a little bit of a gotcha to them, so I thought it could be good to do them each as a separate assignment, and that is what we're going to cover next.
I can try and color the bullets maybe.
Originally, my plan was to give you a challenge to color the bullets and make them just a little bit larger like we have in the design. However, as I was researching this, I came across a relatively new CSS property, or rather pseudo selector, that makes this challenge extremely easy. So just this once, you can sit back and relax. I'm going to show you just how easy this is. There's a little bit of a gotcha with it, but I included a slide here that shows you the MDN docs for the marker pseudo element. And believe it or not, this very specifically selects the bullets on list items. And even look at this example, it's changing the color and it's making it a little bit larger with its font size. That's exactly what we want to do. You can click this slide to go check out the docs, poke around these allowable properties, and of course, you should probably play with this a little bit, but fortunately, this is a really easy thing for us to implement. I'm just going to copy this and add my pseudo element selector for marker. One thing to keep in mind is that this is not accepted by all browsers. However, Safari, Firefox, and newer versions of Chrome have all adopted the marker pseudo element selector, and I'm certain as time passes, this is going to become even more widely accepted, and therefore I feel pretty confident using this method for accomplishing this task. So simply enough, I can change the font size to, let's say, something like 1.4 rem, and sure enough, that made our bullets a little bit larger. Now, as I was playing with this, I noticed that if we get too large, let's say 3 rem, things become pretty misaligned, and at least at this time when I was researching, I could not find a good way to realign these bullets with the text. So in my playing around, I found that 1.4 made the bullets larger without getting them misaligned with the text. So for now, we have that limitation. I'm just going to work within that and say the font size is 1.4 rem. It's not quite as large as what we have here, but that's okay. And then again, simply enough, I'm just going to go take the color of our text here. This is the blue color that we want. It's not quite made the bullets larger without getting them misaligned, which I could not find a good way to realign these bullets with the text. So in my playing around, I found that 1.4 made the bullets larger without getting them misaligned with the text. So for now, we have that limitation. I'm just going to work within that and say the font.
Okay, so this is something I just found out, right? So I can actually make another one if you guys want. And this is going to be part 2 of this, right? And this has to be CSS stack hashtag some marker. Basically styles the bullets, and let's make comment here. Font size might misalign the text. Okay, I don't know the correct word for misaligned.
Font size is 1.4 rem. It's not quite as large as what we have here, but without getting them misaligned with the text. So for now, we have that limitation. I'm just going to work within that and say the font size is 1.4 rem. It's not quite as large as what we have here, but that's okay. And then again, simply enough, I'm just going to go take the color of our text here. This is the blue color that we want, and stick it right here as our color. And sure enough, we have the blue color on the bullets. Easy peasy. Well, I hope you didn't become too comfortable letting me do all the work, because in the next screencast, we are going to add this logo, and by we, I of course mean you, in a challenge. So that's what we'll do in the next screencast.
Okay, adding the logo is tricky. This is a good CSS practice, but I really want to skip it, to be honest. But okay, place the grade.
I actually debated a little bit whether or not I should include this as a real challenge for this section, only because it touches on some CSS that you may not be super familiar with. But in the end, I settled on remembering that you guys are capable and you can use Google to your advantage just like a real developer. So here it is. I decided to add it in. Your challenge is to place that gray React logo in the background. We have that logo here under images as React icon large.png. Something important to know about this icon is that it is actually half of the React logo. It looks from the design like maybe it's a full React logo that's just bleeding off the page, but if you look closely, once you put this React icon large on your actual page, you'll notice that it's only half of the logo. At first, that threw me off. That just had to do with the way that I exported it from Figma. Honestly, I think it makes our job a lot easier as we're placing it on the page. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. One last little piece of advice I'll give you is to add this background image to the main element. It probably would work just fine to add it to the entire body element, but I'm going to be doing it to the last little piece of advice I'll give you is to add this background image to the main element. It probably would work just fine to add it to the entire body element, but I'm going to be doing it to main, so you might as well do it to the main element as well. Again, Google is a developer's best friend, so don't be afraid to use Google while you're trying to solve this challenge. Pause now and work on adding this background image.
Okay, let's add this background image. Okay, so we have React icon large.png, which is not visible for some reason, and here's our CSS. So the challenge is to place the gray React logo in the background, and don't use an IMG element. Okay, so I can set background image property to be equal to, I don't know how to import an image file here. How do you guys import? Okay, let's see. So it's like URL and then path. Okay, cool. Please show me the suggestions. Come on. Come on, show me the suggestions, please. React icon large.png, and that's it. Huh. Okay. If this worked, so no repeat, maybe no repeat is doing something. And there is a width and a height, of course. Okay, so it does not repeating now. And then you just have to place it right here. So background position. How do I do this? I don't even know.
Kill me.
So it basically centers or right line. Let's see. I don't even know. So what we can do is, so these are the values, I guess. Right, right, center. Okay. Yo, we did it, bro. Did it. I think we saved it. I don't know. Did we save it? Sweet it. I don't know how to share. This site is not working out. Okay, now we can share. Let's share on Twitter, I guess. Let's copy it. And
Okay, hopefully you found this wasn't actually that big of a
did
deal. So I'm going to add first the background image to my main element here. I'm going to use the URL function so I can specify the location for these images. This is relative to my style.css file, so I'm going to say /images/ React icon large.png. Okay, and we see that it automatically is repeating around the entire page, so that's where the background repeat comes in and we want to say no repeat. Or by default, it's in the upper left of our page or the main element, and this is where background position comes in. Now, background position is actually a combination of background position X and background position Y. In fact, let's start out there. We can say background position X, that's my position. By default, it's in the upper left of our page or the main element, and this is where background position comes in. Now, background position is actually a combination of background position X and background position Y. In fact, let's start out there. We can say background position X, that's my position to the left and right. I want to push it all the way to the right. This is where having half of a logo becomes pretty handy for us because it automatically looks like it's bleeding off the side of the page. And then with background position Y, we can specify something like top, which is where it is now, or bottom. Bottom, I think, is a touch too low, although center is maybe a touch too high. I can also use percentages, so we can split the difference and say something like 75%. And now that we've seen these as two separate...
okay, wow, that was really helpful. I'm gonna copy this. Paste it here. Let's type back.
For properties, I actually can just combine these and say background position, which is background position X, and then I'll use a space and then Y of 75%, and that simplifies it a bit. If I really wanted to, I could use the shorthand background property, which would be background, and then I would just copy and paste this one first, space, this one, space, this one. Honestly, I always forget what the background property is short for, so I'm actually going to leave these as 3 separate properties so that in the future it's really easy for me to remember what each of those pieces means. And awesome, this represents a culmination of everything that we've learned so far about React. Let me go ahead and clean up this challenge. Now, of course, we've been spending a bit of time in CSS land here. And as I've mentioned, I still think that's a really important thing to do. Even though our main focus in this course is to learn React, it's really important to synthesize some of that other information that you have learned in the past so that it doesn't become stale to you and you just forget it. That being said, in the next screencast, let's spend some time looking here. And as I've mentioned, I still think that's a really important thing to do. Even though our main focus in this course is to learn React.
So it's in the right and then 75% below, I guess.
It's really important to synthesize some of that other information that you have learned in the past so that it doesn't become stale to you and you just forget it. That being said, in the next screencast, let's spend some time looking back at everything.
So if we nice, as expected.
That we did learn about React because that's actually what we're here to learn. And at the same time, we'll take that opportunity to have a quick quiz and to look at a self-assessment project that you can do on your own. So that's what we'll be doing next.
Yeah, I don't want to do this.
You've done a great job so far in this course. Before you just plow ahead to the next section, it's time for a solo project. This is meant to be a chance for you to flex your new React skills that you've been learning about so far in this section, but this time without the training wheels. And there's going to be a few of these throughout this React course, and these projects serve a really important purpose. They're meant to be a tool for you to gauge whether you are actually ready to keep moving forward in the curriculum or not. Unlike the challenges that I usually give you, I won't be walking you through a solution to this one. Instead, I'm going to be asking you to sort of go out on your own to build this project. That said, you're not actually completely on your own. We've got a thriving community here on Scrimba that's very willing to give feedback on your code. We'll talk more about that in just a minute, but first I want you to keep in mind that no one here is giving you a grade for these projects like they would if you were in school. One of my personal objectives is to shift people's understanding of how learning occurs. In school, we're trained to complete a project for the grade, but here you're completing the project to test yourself and to practice. So skipping one of these solo projects will really only deprive you of the best chance you have to test out your skills and to really help you decide if you grasp the concepts that we've been learning so far. Okay, with that guilt trip behind us, let's actually take a look at what we're building. For this project, you're going to be building a digital business card. Everything here is static, and you can see there's actually 2 different designs that you can choose from. In fact, if you click the screenshot, it will send you to the Figma design file. You'll see that there's actually more designs, including a light mode version of these designs. And what you can do is just choose the one you like best and build that one. When you get to that design file, make sure to click the little arrow at the top and choose to duplicate your drafts. And as far as actually coding the project goes, I recommend that you just build the designs that you can choose from. In fact, if you click the screenshot, it will send you to the Figma design file. You'll see that there's actually more designs, including a light mode version of these designs. And what you can do is just choose the one you like best and build that one. When you get to that design file, make sure to click the little arrow at the top and choose to duplicate your drafts. And as far as actually coding the project goes, I recommend that you just build your project here in Scrimba. On this screencast, if you look in the very lower right, you'll see a menu with 3 dots. If you click that, there's an option to fork this screencast to a new scrim. Doing that will make a duplicate of this project that you will have in your own account so that you don't have to worry about losing your work. You can see I really didn't give you a whole lot to work with here. We have a very basic HTML file that has our div with the ID of root, an empty index.js file, some very basic styles, and the 2 dependencies that you'll need to get React set up. Okay, let's come back to the requirements of this project. First of all, I want you to be building this project from scratch, which is why I'm not giving you any starter code at all. Next, and probably pretty obvious, I want you to fill in your own information for the visual business card here. And while you're building it, I want you to make separate components for the info section, which is what I'm calling this whole top half up here, the about section, which is really just this header and paragraph, the interest section, which is another header and paragraph, and a footer section, which has the social icons. While you're working on this solo project, make sure to share your work. In fact, you don't even need to wait until you're completely finished with the project. You can be asking for code reviews and help all along the way. If you click the Discord icon here, it will open the scrimba Discord server specifically to a channel called I Built This, but in reality, you can share your project in any of the channels that make sense to do so in. And then for anyone who is learning in public and likes to use Twitter, you can click this Twitter icon, which will open Twitter and pre-populate a new tweet where you can include a link to your project so that you can share to the world. Okay, I wish you the best of luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's projects. Awesome job building some of your first React projects. I know that these are just static sites, and so far you're really not seeing benefits of using React to build these kinds of projects. But now that we have some of the basic React syntax under our belts, we're ready to start dipping our toes into a few of the really neat features that React has to offer as a framework. But first, let's take just a minute to recap what we've worked on so far in this section. In the beginning, it can be really helpful to know why we even care about React in the first place. We learned about how it is composable and declarative, what those terms mean, and how that's beneficial to us as web developers. Then we learned about the JSX syntax and how that allows us to write code that's much more familiar to us because it looks like we're writing HTML code inside of our JavaScript. Then we saw how we could actually apply the composable nature of React by creating our own custom components. For example, in our React fact site, we created our own components for the main content of our page, but also for our navigation bar. Obviously, in this case, our navigation bar and our main sections are pretty simple, but hopefully you can imagine as your sites get more and more complex, how the ability to segment each of the pieces of your page into its own components can be a really beneficial thing. And soon we'll be really tapping into the power that comes with that as we learn more about React. Then we started learning about how we can style our project because, well, obviously adding CSS is one of the key things that we need to make it look polished. Truthfully, there are a ton of ways to add styling to React, but for now we'll just be sticking with CSS classes because they're familiar, and all of these things combined have enabled us to create our own static pages in React. Like I mentioned, because we've only been working on static things so far, you might not yet be understanding why we're using React in the first place, but I promise we're gonna get there and I promise it will be worth it. Before just moving on, you should celebrate your wins. Over in Discord, there is a Today I Did channel. You click on the screenshot here, we'll take you there, and you should let everyone know that you have just completed the first section of the introduction to React. Also, this might be the time to realize if you've been sitting down for too long or watching too much of this in one sitting, make sure you take a break. Your brain needs to rejuvenate itself, especially with all the new information you've been learning. So once again, congratulations on completing this section. You really should be proud of yourself. When you're ready to jump deeper into React, I will see you in the next section.
I really want to go for the Notes app, maybe.
Now that we've covered the basic syntax and concepts of building a static page in React, we're now ready to jump into the next phase, which is learning how to use data to create our web pages. In regular HTML and in the React code that we've done so far, all of the content that we're displaying on the page has been hard-coded directly into the React components. And it turns out this has some major limitations, which we'll be discussing in this section of building a static page in React. We're now ready to jump into the next phase, which is learning how to use data to create our web pages. In regular HTML and in the React code that we've done so far, all of the content that we're displaying on the page has been hard-coded directly into the React components. And it turns out this has some major limitations, which we'll be discussing in this section. First, let's look at the project that we just made. This little React Facts page, all of the data on this page was actually hard-coded directly into the components themselves. But now let's look at this section's project, which is a clone of the Airbnb experiences page. Up near the top, we have some elements that are likely just hard-coded pieces of data. However, when you get toward the bottom and you have a list of different experiences, you can probably imagine that there isn't a developer sitting around waiting for a new experience to become available on the Airbnb website and then immediately going into the code and updating this list to include that new experience. Instead, the data that's living in Airbnb's database is what will be driving the list that we see here. And once you start thinking in terms of components on a page that are actually being driven or displayed based on the data that underlies the page, you'll start to see the same architecture existing all over the web. Basically, any e-commerce site or page that has any kind of list on it is probably not using anything hard-coded into the code of the page, but instead is using the data that lives behind it to drive the content that exists on the page. If that's confusing at all, don't worry, we're going to dive into the specifics and see exactly what I'm talking about. Just like before, you can click on the screenshot you see here to go to the Figma design file for this section's project. And also just like before, when you get there, you'll see a screen that looks similar to this. I'd highly recommend that you click on the drop-down arrow near the top, go down to duplicate to your drafts, and choose this option to create an editable copy that will live in your own drafts instead of trying to use the one that is shared amongst everyone coming to this page. Once you click duplicate to your drafts, you should see a little modal at the bottom that pops up that says that the file was duplicated to your drafts, which also includes a...
Okay, we're gonna do this later. We'll just see. Okay. We can try Notes app. Please don't say that we need to do something. All of these before we go to the Notes app, please. Please don't. No, I think we'll have to do it. Huh. I don't know, man. And what's in this one? So map, maybe map. I think this is the best tutorial ever. But if I have all of these hours, it took me 10 days to convert 2 hours, and now I'm gonna do all of these 7 and 9 hours. I really have just 11 hours to do 9 hours of course. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. But see you tomorrow, I guess.